cases and thousands of primary close contacts within a month.
What would be extended further if we do still see 1 or 2 cases this time next week?
No, we will review, as we always do, on a day-by-day basis. I have great confidence that we'll be able to go to E settings after the end of next week.
What indications do you need to see in order to make that happen then?
Well, obviously I expect that people will be in quarantine as they're identified as new cases now. In large part, that's a real rationale for a lockdown, that everyone is at home to the fullest extent that they can be, and therefore if they are incubating this virus and become symptomatic and get tested, they've not exposed anyone else. Pre-lockdown, each and every one of us has on average about 100 close contacts, unique close contacts. When we're all moving around that much, if we're transmitting to other people and they all have 100 close contacts, that is hugely exponential transmission of this virus. So the lockdown is to make sure that we see cases who are already quarantining, like one of the new cases from overnight. I'd love to see cases driven down to 0 by virtue of that, but if the number of exposure sites stabilise and we're really not seeing new or concerning exposure sites, that gives us all great confidence that we can ease up.
Can you explain the increase?
Numbers have not exploded. Contact tracers yesterday said they're meeting every key benchmark. Vaccinations are up. We're hitting record testing levels. Melburnians are doing their bit, and numbers have not gone up exponentially. So what's the concern here?
So we have managed that exponential growth unmitigated. So I've talked about the R0 for this virus. It might be 5. That means if you're not altering your behaviour, if you're not doing contact tracing, every person passes it on to 5 others. Clearly that's not happening here. We're chasing down every single case, we're chasing down their primary close contacts, but we've seen a growth of probably a dozen primary close contacts for that first case. It could become positive, and we're seeing individuals where we don't know how they've acquired it. That means there are people out there, potentially, probably, who have it and who are not aware that they're infectious. So we need the number of contacts that each and every person across Victoria has, Melbourne in particular, to be limited to just a few people and not 100 people.
Can you just explain that 10% of people who've got it in an unusual situation, how do you compare that to last year? If you had hundreds of mystery cases last year, how can you actually say this is worse than last year?
So certainly through the BlackRock outbreak, the Holiday Inn outbreak, where we were able to track all of those primary close contacts, we didn't see that number who were transmitting in those casual or very short-lived exchanges. They were overwhelmingly in the work and home and prolonged contact situations. Through wave 1 and wave 2, no, we didn't have that level of detail, so it's hard to say. But we know that these viruses, these variants of concern that we're dealing with now, are more transmissible. We know the secondary attack rate, the number of people within households, the number of people within workplaces who end up getting infected is much higher than for the original wild-type virus. So it's more infectious, and it shouldn't surprise us if it's happening in casual settings.
Can you just explain that Brighton hope?
With a group of other people, they've all tested negative, but this individual has tested positive. They were outdoors, or they were in a well-ventilated, shaded, but effectively ventilated setting, but nonetheless transmissions occurred. Now that will happen. We know that ventilation is a great risk mitigator, but it's not going to do the whole thing when you've got a really contagious variant.
On the fleeing transmission, Catherine Bennett said today, in the Kilmore outbreak, BlackRock outbreak,
Some viewers on